And welcome everyone to God's Views on Political News. Good to see everybody here. Bill, it looks like we've caught you in a black hole today.
I'm in a black hole. I'm actually floating in outer space right now in a black hole. So if you hear any weird sounds, it's something going on out here in the universe.
Well, it's probably a safer place to be than our world today, so
Well,
that might be a good thing.
who
How,
knows?
how's everybody doing? I see Wanda and Bethany Cloud on Facebook. I have a feeling that my Periscope isn't up, so I don't know. Some people are maybe coming in a little bit later. Hopefully, we can get that up and going. But we have a lot to talk about again today, Bill, like always. But it
I
just,
was going to say, when is that? When is that news?
yeah, it's like when is that ever the not the instance that we have every single week? Um, but I want to talk about. I want to start with Tlaib and Omar. So Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. Let's talk
If we
about.
must, okay.
I don't know how we're going to get through it. I should have taken some medication beforehand. But and hello to Jonathan and Teresa and Robin on Facebook and YouTube, Nancy and Ken. Sorry, everybody. I apologize. I think my Periscope is still down for whatever reason, so it doesn't look like we're going to have that up today. But anyway, what I was going to tell you was that, as you know, with Tlaib and Omar, I believe, as most people believe, that this was a whole political stunt to get Israel to bar them from coming and then complain about it. For example, they didn't even put down that they were going to Israel, Bill. They were going to Palestine. And then after they asked to go, weeks before, and probably even months before, they've been spewing their anti-Israel hate and supporting BDS, which is the boycotting of Israel. And so they knew that was coming. And then when they wanted to go, President Trump spoke out and said, I don't think these people should be allowed to go into Israel with this type of attitude, even if they are in our Congress. I mean, your thoughts about this?
Well, I agree with him. Um, if somebody wants to come in my house, but they won't acknowledge it as my house, uh, are you crazy? You're out of your mind. I don't think they're crazy. I think they're just plotters. They're schemers. I really believe that these people sit in a room somewhere and they try to devise and concoct ways that they can create a controversy so that they can play to the emotions and prejudices of the people that follow them and kind of work everybody up into a frenzy. I really, really believe that that's what they spend their time doing. Where these two gals are concerned, and yeah, I chose that word on purpose, um, to first of all try to disregard the fact that the place is called Israel, to call it Palestine. It's like they come in with a chip on their shoulder. And how dare Israel act as a sovereign nation and say we're going to pick and choose who we allow to come into this country, whether you're a U.S. Congresswoman or not. I mean, Barack Obama kept a member of the Knesset from coming to the United States several years ago. Wasn't really, that I recalled anyway, any big stink about all of that. It's just that, sovereign
There was,
nations,
there was no
huh?
there was no stink about that
No,
at
there
all.
wasn't any stink about it. Sovereign nations have the right, and I would even say duty, to say or deny access to the country and entry into the country. So they're going to make us think about it because it was all a big political ploy. But as I was observing this unfold, I could not help but think of two things that we see in Scripture. Number one, it's in the book of Nehemiah, and it's when the Jews have come back from Babylonian captivity. They're rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. They're working on the temple. And there is this guy from, we'll just call him an ancient Palestinian, even though that's not his ethnicity. But he was someone that lived in the area, and he got together with some guys and said, "Look, they're trying to rebuild this country, and so we're going to need to stop that. But we're going to act like we're civil and nice, and we're going to come to them under the guise of we're here for good reasons, et cetera, et cetera. His name was Sanballat. But what he told those that he conspired with is, we need to get into the midst of them, and then we need to destroy them. We need to destroy them from within. And so Tlaib and Omar, their goal, if they had gotten into the country, was to meet with people whose mission it is to destroy Israel from the face of the map and to do it from within the borders of Israel. So they are enemies of Israel, and that makes them enemies of the God of Israel. Because in Genesis 12, here's something that every believer should know. It says, or God says, I'll bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. And if you're going to say some of the things that Rashida Tlaib and Omar and others have said about Israel, in my view, you've made yourself an enemy of the God of Israel. And so you're living under a curse. So how it plays out from there, we'll have to wait and see. But that is the facts. She and others have brought a curse upon themselves.
Now, Dawn said, I think a majority of the U.S. wants to slap some sense into them.
Not only the majority. Well, no, shut up, Bill. Go on, continue. I'm sorry.
Bethany said, if I want to go to Mecca but call it D.C., would they let me in? Rolling my eyes. Of course they would, Beth. And you can wear anything that you want to wear. Just it's a free country over there. Nelson said, remember by peace they come. One of the things that it's so funny to watch this, because as you know, Tlaib had asked for, because she wanted to go see her Siti, her grandmama, who was so sick, and she just wanted to go see her. So she wrote out this wonderful little letter and said, oh, please, Israel, let me come in. I'm knocking at your door. I promise you I'll be a good girl when I get over there. I won't spew my anti-Israel hate. I won't talk about BDS. I just want to see my grandma. And so Israel's like, okay, we'll give you a humanitarian waiver. You can come in and see your grandma. 5 minutes later, no, I'm so oppressed. I can't do that. And I can't come there until I can come in there freely and spew my hate all I want. Though she didn't say that. Those are my words. And then the grandmother, I read later, had said something so charming, something like, I hope God ruins President Trump, So I guess grandma's not too sick to hate on President Trump, and I'm not sure which God she was, speaking of when she said that. But
I could speculate.
Yeah, so could I. And so much hate, comes from the left. Now, we had some people who were chiming in. I don't know if we have Gloria Steinem's tweet. Gloria Steinem.
How old is she? I mean, is she not like 100 now, or
maybe 103, somewhere around in there? But if Brandon has that tweet from Gloria Steinem, if you don't, I'll ad lib. Yeah, Gloria. Well, it's not the exact tweet, I don't think, but Gloria Steinem had said basically that I'm so glad that President Trump, I don't live under your control, and I don't have to go to a place under Netanyahu's control, and basically came out and supported these two. And from what I understand, she's a big supporter of BDS. So she was happy to chime in. Hope you remember who she is after, she was popular, and that was at the early 80s. And I say popular, kind of
1880s, right?
I think that is. And now Jim and Linda Fleming are saying that Tlaib is short for Taliban, right? And then Ginger, happy to see you, Bill, Ginger Woods. God has exposed these two, and the preachers and believers need to wake up. They are socialism, and their God is Allah, Ken said. And Linda said, why did she not send for grandma and take care of her? Why didn't she go on her own dime, Linda? She didn't need to ask permission, or she could just have gone and made it quietly, money out of her own pocket. She could have done that. And Dawn said, let's not forget they could have gone with their colleagues a week before. That was a sure sign that they were looking to create problems. There you go. And yeah. So, and then Jim said, Aloy crowbar. So.
Okay. Well, again, it's all a ploy. It was all manufactured. And the disgusting thing about it is, as far as I'm concerned, is that how some other members of Congress are condemning Netanyahu and the Israeli government and President Trump for voicing an opinion on it. Again, he'll bless those that bless you, he said, of Abraham's seed, and I will curse those that curse you. And, I'm not saying that anything's going to happen to them. I'm just saying that they have pitted themselves against the God of Israel, and in meeting with people that are known terrorists, supporting them, aligning themselves with them. And how can you not, how could it not be said that you are wanting to curse Israel in that sense? So they, they're not only facing opposition from Netanyahu, they're not only facing opposition from Trump and people like you and me, but their bigger problem is the creator of the universe. So they're walking on thin ice, I think.
Now, Teresa said, I wonder if her lady followers know that she is pro-Sharia law and what that stands for. My guess would be some women who follow them do not know that. Jim and Linda said, heaven is real, hell is hot, Muhammad is dead, and Yeshua is not. So, yeah. And I think one of the things, too, that I don't know if we have the cartoon to show you, that of the anti-Semite artist who had the cartoon, and this is Netanyahu silencing Tlaib supposedly, and Trump silencing Omar, and only if that were true. But
yeah, right, exactly.
And so they bring out a cartoon, and this woman who is a reporter said, looks like both Omar and Tlaib shared this awful Carlos Tlaib cartoon in Instagram stories yesterday. In 2006, Tlaib came in second in Iran's International Holocaust Cartoon Contest, which is a thing that exists in case you thought the timeline couldn't get any worse. So yeah, and they just continue to do anything that they can using anti-Semitism, using a cartoon from somebody who has won a contest, it speaks out against Israel, run a contest in Iran. I mean, it's just pathetic. And we're supposed to believe that these two, they're just so innocent. They have a First Amendment right to talk. It's not that they hate Israel. They just want to talk about it.
Well, I mean, they've been talking. They've been talking quite a bit. And, their press conference, when Omar more or less said that Israel is not a democracy and Israel is not our ally, those weren't her words verbatim, but that was the message I got out of it. She says things like this. Tlaib is just as, demeaning toward Israel as she is. And there is no backlash from Congress. There's no backlash from Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, for goodness sake, he's Jewish. I mean, you would think that they would have something to say about this. And if they have, I haven't caught wind of it, so you may correct me on that. But so far, it seems that they get to do and say whatever they want, and there's no one, at least on the Democratic side, who has the spine to speak up and put them in their place. So I can only take from that they're spineless or they agree, and they're willing to let these two and AOC and whatever that other gal's name is, run wild like this.
Now, I don't know if, Brandon, if you have President Trump's tweet that he tweeted out this morning, if we can show that on the screen if you have it. And this is in response to this press conference yesterday that Tlaib and Omar came out and talked at. He said, sorry, I don't buy Representative Tlaib's tears. I have watched her violence, craziness, and most importantly, words for far too long. Now, tears. She hates Israel and all Jewish people. She's an anti-Semite. She and her three friends are the new face of the Democrat Party. Live with it. Not one to mince words. He's just like, I'm done looking at all this pretense. And what he was referring to is she got to this point, Tlaib did, where she was talking about her mother, who had to go through a checkpoint. And she remembers her mother going through a checkpoint when she was a child and how horrible that was. And my thoughts are, yeah, well, it's called TSA in America. And I'm sure, the checkpoints in the Middle East are a little bit worse and all that. But her mother wasn't the only one going through checkpoints. But she seems to cry and at the same time calling the president an MFer, when she has opportunity. So I can understand why President Trump sees it as fake.
Well, I agree with President Trump on this, and the Democratic Party, this is who you are. That's the face of the Democratic Party. I mean, you don't see Nancy Pelosi on as much as these ladies. Did I say that right? Gals. It's like Nancy Pelosi is she's there in the shadows sometimes, but this is the face of the Democratic Party. So he's right. This is what we have. So you're going to have to, live with that. And if you support that, then, boy, what does that say for our country? But back to the checkpoints. Crimea River. For 20 years, I've traveled all over this country and to other countries. And there's not one time that I went to get on an airplane, for instance, that I didn't have to go through a checkpoint, that I didn't have to prove to the people who are there that I'm not some idiot that wants to blow somebody up. It's just the way it is. And guess who is really the reason that we have to do that? It's not because Christians flew airplanes into buildings. It's not because Jews did that. It's because there is a mindset in a certain group of people in this world that live in a certain region in this world that have this idea that it serves God's purposes to take as many people out with you as you possibly can by strapping an explosive to your chest, by walking into a little pizza shop in a little neighborhood in Jerusalem and killing innocent men, women, and children, or walking in on a Passover Seder in a hotel ballroom and doing that. Or I could go on, and I could go on, and I could go on. And so, yeah, Israel has these checkpoints. And by the way, if you go to Israel, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what color skin you are, what language you speak. If you go to Israel, guess what? They're going to greet you at the door, and they're going to say, why should I let you come in? And you're going to have to prove to me you're here for a good reason. We've taken tour groups over, 50 people, and they know we're coming. I mean, that's how they make their money. But guess what? When we get there, we don't get a free pass. We have to go through a checkpoint. We have to go through security. We have to go through, their entry system. It's just the way it is.
And they strap bombs to children and women too.
Yes.
And so that they check both of them. Ginger Wood said we have to pray, speak out when we throw up our hands and say God will handle it. Is how we lost prayer in school. Christians didn't do their part, just slept. Wake you children of God. Thomas Kincaid said checkpoints are not offensive to those who intend no harm. Wanda said could have gone through Jordan to gain access to her family. It was, as you said, a political stunt. Carrie Miller says when all else fails, bring on the tears. It works for the far left, not us. We don't buy it. Nice try. And Chesney said every country should have checkpoints. Israel has the right to deny them. Tlaib could have gone through Jordan to gain access to the family, Wanda said. That's exactly what these gals stand for, Robin said, shaking her head. And Jonathan said it's hard to hear Bill, but maybe Bill could speak up just a little. No checkpoints is absolutely like open borders, no protection whatsoever. The heart of the matter is they are anti-Semitic, James and Gail O'Hare said. Let's see.
Oh, hey, James and Gail. There's some Yankee friends of mine.
Linda Smith said, alert, I was made aware of a #1 docudrama on Netflix called The Family, Anti-Christian Agenda on Christians in Prayer at the White House. Check it out, appalling agenda. So it's, yeah. And Rico said he's glad that we are speaking out on this. What I found amazing, too, is that here's one example. This came out of the Detroit News. This is a female rabbi, Alana Alpert, who's the director of Detroit Jews for Justice. And she wrote, at their heart, the smears against Tlaib and other members of Congress are an attempt at distraction. Trump and Republicans recognize that their agenda only benefits the rich and powerful, and that they need to use these divisive strategies to appeal to a wider base of voters. And the Trump administration is failing us, and they know it. They also know that to get away with their radical schemes and avoid paying the political consequences for their failed agenda, they have to keep us divided. And that's what they're trying to do. Pit Jews, people of color, and other groups against one another to try to convince us that the greatest threat we face is each other. rather than the cheating policies and the widespread corruption that harm us. I'm sorry, but when I read that, I just, whoa.
Well, where do I start? I'd like Rabbi, whatever her name is,
Yes.
to go live in the territories for a while. To walk up and down the streets of Nablus and say, I'm your friend, and see what happens. It's kind of like the gal that went to Somalia to prove that all of the Muslims over there in Somalia were good, loving, peace-loving people, and what happened to her? She got killed. So, you know, a lot of these leftist, progressive, radical Jews over here, you know, they're ethnically Jewish, but they have, not all of them, mind you, but a lot of them have. They go maybe and visit during Pesach or, you know, some of the other high holy days, and then they leave and they come back over to America. They don't live there and have to deal with things on a day in, day out basis. They don't know what most Israelis have to live with. Now, mind you, there are some secular, socialist Israelis too, who believe that, at least they used to believe, that if we give the Palestinians or whoever a piece of land, then we'll have peace. And many of them that live in the land, and I know some personally, are coming to the realization finally that most of these people don't want PEACE. They just want another piece of land, another piece of land, another piece of this, and another piece of that, until it's all gone. It's all in their hands. And so these leftist Jews over here, it's really easy for them to say those things about what's going on in the land of Israel when they don't live there. Now, to me, this rabbi just sounds like another radical. Forget that she's a rabbi, so-called, you know, or that it doesn't even matter that she presents herself as being Jewish. She's a radical. She's a progressive. And they're the ones that are trying to get you and me to be divided over this and try to exploit any kind of feelings that we have in being merciful and compassionate until they get the upper hand. That's what Sanballat tried to do. That's what the guy that wanted to get inside the walls of Jerusalem wanted to do. We're going to come and we're going to say we're here in peace and we want to help you. We want to live in, you know, brotherhood and fellowship and community and kumbaya and all those kinds of things. But his real objective was, let's get into the midst of them and kill them. And that's what's going on here. So I really, really probably need to hush when it comes to this rabbi.
Well, you know, it's pretty amazing to read that. And, you know, one of the things that people aren't talking about in mainstream media, and you're not going to hear about it, is the Mifta, the group, the anti-Israeli group that supported financially Omar and Tlaib to go over there. Now, Linda Sarsour doesn't like that because she's like, well, you know, other people have gone over before and these people have given them support. Probably we didn't know about that then either. And one of the things that the Mifta published is something called a blood libel against Jews. The term blood libel has been applied in other contexts in recent years, but Mifta claimed Jews have murdered Christian children to use their blood for baking matzos at Passover.
Do you know how old that is? Do you know how far that goes back?
Forever. I mean,
yeah, this is what they were saying in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
This is something that they have accused them of, you know, for centuries and centuries. And so they're just, you know, they're just regurgitating the same old stuff.
Well, and you know, to let you know a flavor a little bit more of who these people are and what they're like, they asserted also another thing that they wrote. The Jew-controlled entertainment media have taken the lead in persuading a whole generation that homosexuality is a normal and acceptable way of life, that there's nothing at all wrong with white women dating or marrying black women, or with white women marrying Asian women, that all races are inherently equal in ability and character, except that the character of the white race is suspect because of a history of oppressing other races, and that any effort by whites at racial self-preservation is reprehensible. I mean, they just go on and on. And the founder, Hanan Ashwari, I can't even pronounce that, defended some attacks it says they are seen by the people as resistance, and you cannot, however, adopt the language of either the international community or the occupier by describing anybody who resists as terrorist. Mifta also described one of the first female Palestinian suicide bombers as the beginning of a string of Palestinian women dedicated to sacrificing their lives for the cause. So these people are staunchly anti-Israel, and these are the people who were supporting Omar and Tlaib to go over to where they said they were going in Palestine. And we're supposed to sit here and pretend that everything was fine. It's just Israel. Israel's bad, and that's why they didn't want them to go. And the mainstream media is covering this up. They're not even talking about it.
Well, and that would be an embarrassment, wouldn't it, to talk about it, to get into those kinds of things. And while you were reading off some of the accusations that this particular group makes, like against the entertainment industry, for instance, and it being Jewish run and all this kind of stuff. Those are things that I heard, and sorry, we got a fire truck going by. Those same kinds of accusations are things that I heard as a kid growing up from people who were in the KKK.
Yes.
I mean, that's the same, the same way of thinking, the same mindset, and some of the same accusations. So, that's who they're aligning themselves with.
So would it be appropriate then, taking what you just said, because they do sound like the KKK, what if the KKK were sponsoring some of the Congress people to go, anywhere? Would that be okay?
Well,
would the media
the answer to that question.
Yes. And it should be the same thing, but we know that there's not equal anything when it comes to talking about the left or justice or anything else.
Well, there are those who are more equal than others, Susan,
Exactly. Well, I wanted to kind of get into another subject. I was doing some research the other day, and I found what I'm about to tell you. And I don't know 100% if this is true or not, if this is made up. All I can say is, if it's true, it's alarming. If it's something that's coming, we need to be aware of it. And I typically don't bring things out until I'm, almost 100% sure. But this was just so enormous that I didn't want to sit on it and wait for it. So all I'm going to say to you is, take this with a grain of salt, but we'll talk about it after. Brandon has a video for us. This is from the Imam of Peace, who is supposedly an imam in Australia, and what he has to say about Ilhan Omar. And if we have that, Brandon, let's roll that.
عضوة الكونغرس إلهان عمر متورطة بالتخابر مع النظام القطري بالتعاون مع ناشطة فلسطينية عملت وسيطة بين إلهان وكل من تميم بن حمد، عبد الله العذبة، سيف الثاني، وعبد الرحمن بن حمد. كشفت مصادر أن إلهان قالت للقطريين إن التحقيقات الجارية بشأنها لن تنتهي لصالحها، وأن نانسي بلوسي رئيسة مجلس النواب الأمريكي سعيدة لكون إلهان تحت التحقيق، ولأن قطر استثمرت في إلهان كثيرا وتخشى خسارتها ستتكفل الدوحة بصفقة بين إلهان وبلوسي. ولصرف الأنظار عن الصفقة التي تجري خلف الكواليس، كثف القطريون ظهور إلهان إعلاميا عبر كل منصاتهم، وبواسطة الناشطة الفلسطينية ليندا صرصور نسقوا معها لإجراء لقاء مع قناة الجزيرة، وآخر في صحيفة ميدل آي القطرية، على أن تقوم فيها بتشويه السعودية والإمارات، وادعاء أن ما تتعرض له ليس إلا مؤامرة دولية، وأن تتهم منتقديها بتلقي رشوات من السعودية والإمارات، واتهام شخصيات بارزة مثل دونالد ترامب الابن وتوم فيتون رئيس منظمة تقاضي إلهان. الخطة القطرية الأكبر هي محاولة تحريض جاريد كوشنر على صهره دونالد ترامب الابن من خلال تقديم شهادات مفبركة للطرفين. الناشطة الفلسطينية المتواطئة مع القطريين تنوي ترشيح نفسها مستقبلا للكونغرس، ويحاول القطريون الاستثمار فيها وتجهيزها. إلهان عمر أمريكية من أصول صومالية فازت بعضوية الكونغرس عام 2016 عن ولاية مينيسوتا. تحوم حولها شبهات متعددة بشأن التحايل على قوانين الهجرة من خلال زواجها من أخيها لتسريع حصوله على الجنسية الأمريكية. من أبرز مواقفها تعاطفها مع مقاتلي داعش وتهربها من إدانة تنظيم القاعدة لأحداث 11 من سبتمبر واستنكار فزع الأمريكيين من القاعدة وحزب الله. عرفت كذلك بمواقفها العدائية تجاه السعودية والإمارات. إلهان عمر، فضيحة جديدة من سلسلة فضائح قطر، وقطر تحاول ستر سوءتها الجديدة.
Again, watching that for me is a little disturbing, but again, I don't know if this Imam of Peace is telling the truth. What we can gain from this is, if it's true, that Ilhan Omar is, we've been focused on her going against Israel. And what this is kind of revealing is that allegedly she's going after Saudi Arabia sort of in the same way, because she's working with Qatar, or Qatar, whichever way you want to say it, and with Linda Sarsour, trying to harm our relationship in the United States with Saudi Arabia, and get the United States to quit giving, selling things to Saudi Arabia, or having an ally with Saudi Arabia. So if you look at it, there's two allies that they're basically trying to destroy, one with Israel and one with Saudi Arabia. Now, your thoughts, Bill?
Well, this is all speculative now, you understand?
Exactly.
This is just me thinking out loud. Of late, Saudi Arabia has been developing or cultivating a relationship with Israel through the back door, mind you, but nevertheless, coming to the realization that if we are going to, as a nation, Saudi Arabia, if we're going to continue to prosper, if we're going to continue to move forward and into the 21st century, then this constant state of war with Israel is not conducive to that. I even know some guys who've said that the whole oil thing is starting to kind of run out and play out in Saudi Arabia, and if they don't have oil, they don't really have an economic future. So they see it as being beneficial to develop better relationships with Israel. And of course, that means working with the United States and maintaining a good relationship with the United States. So if you have this 12th Imam view of how the world is supposed to be, and by that I mean the Islamic view of what their Messiah would be,
right.
Not only is Israel standing in the way, not only is the United States standing in the way, but Saudi Arabia has been a thorn in the side too. In other words, the people who would like to get rid of Saudi Arabia are the likes of Iran and some of these other more radical regimes. So, and by the way, there's Bible to support the idea that the guy we know as the Antichrist is going to come into Saudi Arabia, and he is going to he's going to make war against, or make war in certain regions in what we now call Saudi Arabia. So here's why I said all of that. It makes perfect sense to me that not only would they want to conspire to disrupt Israel and what's going on there, to undermine the United States and from within, and that's always the tactic of the adversary. We have to keep that in mind. It's very, very important. Forget the names of the people. It's what's going on. It's the function. And so they're trying to undermine things from within. And so to learn that they may be plotting, against Saudi Arabia as well, I really don't find that surprising. I think it's, even though we can't prove this beyond any doubt, I think that is something that merits our attention, and I won't be surprised to find that it's true.
Well, and what else is disturbing in that video? I don't know which disturbs me more, but the fact that they said that Linda Sarsour may be running for Congress with the support of Qatar. Now, first of all, that just, I want to back that tape up and take that part out and not even know that might even almost be true. But you're talking about a foreign country who is going to be, if this is true, supporting somebody in the United States to be in our Congress and run for Congress.
Yeah, but you know, we got to stay on this Russian collusion thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, Islam has been trying to affect U.S. politics for a long time. It's just that their tactic has always been a little more subtle, a little more under the radar, and what they've been trying to do is change America from within, so that as they change America from within, then Islamic adherents are elected to Congress. The fact that the previous administration brought a lot of Somalis into the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, there was reasons for that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just happenstance. It wasn't just somebody put their finger on a map and said, okay, we'll send them here. No, there was reasons for that. And so that brings in the idea that, you know, previous administrations have certain sympathies that aren't in the United States' best interest or in Israel's best interest, but are the best interest of an Islamic worldview that sees the world as being under the influence of, under the oppressive influence of Islamic law. So, you know, this is playing out, in my view. You know, a lot of people think this, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. Look, there are conspiracies.
Yeah.
There are people who conspire to do things. And Ilhan Omar, I believe anyway, is the byproduct of a conspiracy to undermine the United States and consequently Israel from within. Because, you know, the old saying they have is, first we get the big Satan, then we get the little Satan. And maybe I've got that backwards, but the idea is they realize they can't get Israel until they get us.
Mm-hmm. I think this is all just bone chilling to me. I mean, like I said, when I found this yesterday, when I discovered that, I couldn't even sleep, you know, because this is so serious and such Bible prophecy just playing out. You know, we can see it happening right before our eyes. And, you know, we have this Justice Democrats that put in Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Presley, which I call the Jezebel Squad. And they want to bring in more. They want to, they've said they want to get rid of the Democrat Party, put in their Progressive Party, and then change everything. And if you get Linda Sarsour, you know, has a lot of followers who believe everything she says and the garbage coming out of her mouth, that she would have a very good chance, unfortunately, to try to get into Congress unless people start to wake up. And if I tell people, if you don't know who the Justice Democrats are, stop what you are doing, go to their website, learn who these people are, and get out there to prevent these people from putting in whoever they want to put in and destroying America.
Well, we do need to be informed. We need to know what, you know, is going on here. I'm kind of one of those people. I believe that you need to know your enemy. I haven't read all of it, but I have read the Quran. I've read from the Hadiths, not because I want to internalize any of that, but just because I want to know how they think. And that's some of the things that I just shared with you as it relates to Islam's view, or radical Islam's view of Saudi Arabia, for instance. You know, that's not just Bill flapping his gums. That's something that is embedded in Islam from way, way back. There's been this internal struggle within Islam for a long time, where, you know, the whole Shia Sunni thing goes, and the belief that the House of Saud has no business being the caretaker for Islamic holy places. So, and then for the Saudi government to at least try to cultivate a better relationship with Israel, well, that can't be. So they must go. A lot of the fundamentals of that is in Islamic writings. So anyway, back to your point. Yeah, we need to wake up. We need to not obsess over what these people are doing, but we need to be aware of what they're doing. And we need to speak up. We need to take action. We need to, counter what they're doing the best we can. Now, where Sarsour is concerned, I'm kind of with you. She's got enough followers that makes a potential run for Congress, a very real possibility. And to think that those kinds of cockroaches would be running around the halls of Congress is frightening, because you can't get rid of them with Orkin.
Well, they're already running around the halls of Congress. I know. They're not even in Congress.
I know. And that's why I'm saying, but to have someone like Sarsour in there,
yep.
It is frightening. It's bad enough that we've got these gals that are, in the news all the time, but then Sarsour and who knows who else. Because unfortunately, there is a mindset sweeping across this nation. We saw it just a few days ago in Portland again, that there are people who would be giddy over the possibility of bringing down the United States as you and I have known it. That's what they want. And those are the kinds of people that are going to listen to the Ilhan Omars and the Rashida Tlaibs and the Linda Sarsours, et cetera. They're going to listen to them, and they're going to support them, and they're going to be able to influence others to do so. It is frightening indeed, in the temporal, earthbound sense.
Right. Right, absolutely. Now, James and Gail O'Hare said righteousness is being attacked on all fronts, but the creator of heaven and earth is sovereign, and his plan is also in motion. Darlene Dine wanted to know where the video is. Just go to Twitter, to the feed of the Imam of Peace, and you'll see that video there. And Samantha said it's unnerving to see it happen. Verona said no matter what will be dealt prepared work to describe. There's only two ways, the Greek mindset, or one, the kingdom mindset. Elizabeth said the AG in Minnesota is building up the Somali population there. James said the Trojan horse has been received and now the results are coming to a head, but not without consequences. Bethany said Dems are embracing the very ones who will completely erase their party. Absolutely. Jonathan said people, we need to get ready for the greater exodus. Wanda said we need to push for laws be placed that anyone who lives by and supports Sharia law is not allowed to run for or hold office in the United States. And Ginger said, yes, we are to be wise, and we all need to listen and obey the Lord's word and stay focused, James said. Teresa said they played a video that Susan found, but she doesn't know the accuracy of it. It was 3 minutes. That's what we just played, and Teresa was telling somebody else about the video. And it's not so much the accuracy of the video, it's the accuracy of what this guy, the Imam of Peace, is saying in general. Is this really coming about? And as we've talked about, it seems like it could very easily come about and be something that's not conspiracy, but something that could very well happen. Now, Ken said, pray for the gutless preachers. Linda said, yes, Dems, they think they're in control and have the power, but they're dealing with the party of the adversary. And Dawn said a few people need to carry around a can of their hot shot when you were talking about roaches. Bribes are blinding people. You cannot serve two masters. You will love the one and hate the other. And Samantha said the Islamic Tsunami by David Rubin is a good book to read. And let's see, Imam of Peace. Yes, that's right, Elizabeth. Elizabeth spelled it out for you so you can see that. Dr. Perry Stone warned the preachers and believers 25 years ago in the book Unleashing the Beast, and the preachers stood quiet. We're seeing a lot of quiet, not so much in the preachers, but in having people who in Christianity are saying, I'm no longer a Christian, and they're losing their faith. And especially people associated with Hillsong are coming out and saying, I'm okay not to be a Christian anymore. So we have a lot happening.
Well, here's something people need to know, and sorry, we've got another emergency vehicle going by. Most people who are listening to this program may already know this, but there are going to be some people who will watch the replay of this. And here's something you need to know, that Allah is not the God of the Bible. They are not one and the same. And I say that because you just mentioned people who are leaving the faith or what have you. Some of those people have also at times said that the God of the Bible and the God of Islam are one and the same. They're just two different perspectives of it. That's a bunch of hooey, okay? Yeah. And in fact, there's several words in Hebrew that mean curse. One of those words is pronounced Allah. And so we need to understand that the Allah of Islam and the God of the Bible are not one and the same. Number two, you'll hear a lot of people say that Islam just means submission, in submission to God's will and those kinds of things. And it kind of overlaps with what a believer's view of our life should be in submitting to God's will. Well, no. Islam does not mean submission in that regard. It means a heel on the top of your neck. That's the idea when Islam talks about submission. So the adversary always disguises his true intent with things that are seemingly good, that sound peaceful, that sound reasonable, that sound logic, but always there's intent to steal, to kill, and destroy. And I want to say one other thing here before I pitch it back over to you. When we were discussing how accurate the information in this particular video is, and is it just somebody making stuff up, or does he know something? I can't help but think of something that happened to me many, many years ago. This was back in 1990, I believe it was, and I was in Jerusalem, and me and a couple other guys were going down to the Western Wall. We stayed right there at the Old City. We were going down to the Western Wall, and the way we went took us through the Muslim Quarter. And as we were going through the Muslim Quarter, this is in the morning, usually the shops would be open. There'd be merchants standing in the doorway. And if you've ever been to Israel, you go to Jerusalem in the Old City, and particularly in the Muslim Quarter, they are trying to corral you. They are trying to drag you into their shops to buy something. Well, on this particular day, it was the opposite. They were closing their doors, and they were telling people to get out. They were telling people, no, you can't come in here right now, etc. And that struck me as very odd. And of course, later on that day, I knew why, and that's because there was an attack on Jewish people who were praying at the wall. It ended up in several people being killed. Being these guys were right in the middle of it there for a little while. My point, those shopkeepers in the Muslim Quarter, they knew what was going to happen before it happened. They knew things that other people didn't know. Right. And it makes me wonder how, well, if this man does know something, because these kinds of things have a way of making the rounds in that world. You know that right. There were a lot of other Muslims living in the United States, in New Jersey, in New York, who knew something was getting ready to happen before it happened. That's not fantasy. That's not, a conspiracy theory. That's a fact. And so it just really makes me wonder if this guy hasn't come across something that is legitimate, and he's putting it out there. We'll have to wait and see if, this sees the light of day. But I can't help but think of that.
Somebody was asking a minute ago, where would Sarsour run if she ran for Congress? And the answer is New York. So that's even more frightening that she would have even, I think, a bigger chance in New York. So again, yeah, you're right. We'll just have to wait and see. But I did want to bring it to you because I just think that there's something to it. My gut tells me there's something to it. And as we're focused over here, something's happening over here. We have to always keep abreast of what's really going on.
How many times have I said the adversary is an illusionist? He wants you looking here because he doesn't want you looking here. Exactly.
Now, we're going to move on to another subject because we're running out of time as always, but this was an interesting subject. We'll have to, I'm sure we'll continue to talk about these people. But as we talk about these women over here in the squad who seem to be wanting to destroy our relationship with Israel and Saudi Arabia, perhaps, we have to also turn and see what is trying to be done to our president in the United States, because the Democrats on the left, the ones who were hoping that the Mueller report would be what brought the president down, they have to do something else, because that's not happening. We have a video that Brandon has from MSNBC. It's a short video. If you could play that, Brandon, on the MSNBC claiming what's next, what's wrong with President Trump now. Do you have that video for us?
He's asking which one is it? It's
MSNBC. It's the first one of the videos. You may not have. I'll just talk about it. That's okay. Basically, it's MSNBC coming out and saying, with a panel of people around, including Al Sharpton, Nicole Wallace is the host of the show, and they're actually sitting there talking about the fact that they believe that President Trump has Alzheimer's. That's their next thing. And then she, at the end of it, comes out and says, and other people just said that he's crazy.
All right. Do you have that there?
The one from CBS?
No.
MSNBC.
MSNBC.
It's okay that if you don't have
All
it.
Right. Well, apparently he didn't have that one ready. It's gone from, he's a Russian, he's a racist, and now he's losing his mind. It seems to me they're the ones that have lost their minds.
Well, and Bill, I mean, they're sitting there talking about the president having Alzheimer's, which there are no indications. They're saying, well, he repeats himself sometimes. He goes back to the same point. Well, a lot of people do. And at the same time, here we have Joe Biden, who lied about being shot in Iraq, who lied about being a coal miner, I could just go on and on and on, lied about having conversations with George W. Bush that the Bush aides say, I don't know what he's talking about because it never happened.
All right. Look, he's got a video here. Let's see if this isn't it. Is that what you were telling me?
Rosenthal, in his good graces, let me go. And it's the reason, for the record, why these are off the record. Candidates come in and pitch the Times to endorse them. They're open, freewheeling conversations. By the way, this is the only one I've ever been to. Yeah. And the reason I think this one leaked out, which to be frank is unfortunate, because off the record conversation.
We assume it came from somebody at the Times.
I have no idea, to be honest. There were like 30 people in the room, including Donald Trump's people. It got talked about in the newsroom. That's probably not a good thing. I may even have talked about it, to be frank. That's probably not a good thing. On the other hand, I also think it's much ado about nothing. Mm-hmm. I think that when 30 people sit in a room and talk to Donald Trump, who's a very vocal guy, and details end up leaking out.
Yeah, but the point is, was it reported that he said on one of his important issues, the building of the wall, did he actually say, well, I'm not really serious about that, I'm just saying negotiable.
That. I'm gonna pass on what was said in the room, because I'm going to honor
That's the point.
I know, but I'm going to honor the off-the-record that the editorial board put in place, so I'm going to pass on what was said.
But, Dean, it wasn't entirely off the record.
Right. The things
so that's it. I mean, I wonder
sure.
whether the New York Times made a mistake.
That is from the New York Times. That you saw is the executive New York Times editor. Okay, he kind of runs everything. He's an African-American man. And he was having a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and information leaked out from that meeting. There was a transcript, and there's some other things that leaked out from there. But what he is saying is, look, we tried our hand. We tried to do chapter 1 was the whole Mueller thing, right? In the special counsel, that didn't work. Got to go on to a new chapter now. New chapter against Donald Trump now is going to be all about racism. Not racism just with African Americans, but racism with Hispanics and anybody else that we can bring in. So that's the new strategy for the New York Times. It's going to be racism, racism, racism.
Okay.
So when you see it, just be aware.
All right, well, so anyway, Mueller's dead. Obviously, that's a dead horse now, and I think that the only one that's still trying to revive it is Nadler. But I better shut up right there. Speaking of dead horses, but
But you can see, these desperation. We don't have, we don't have Russia, so we got to go to racism. We're keeping the R, but we're just going from Russia to racism. And we have, before we talked about that he was mentally ill. We had psychiatrists come out that came out and said that Donald Trump, like 30 of them, signed a piece of paper. Oh yes, he's crazy. This was like a year ago. People who had never treated him, never diagnosed him, never had a conversation with him, they got together, and I think it was in the New York Times, and they said he's mentally ill, he can't be president. So that didn't work. So now we're on to Alzheimer's. And then we have a, I don't know if Brandon has a tweet. Yeah, this is the MSNBC one that we were talking about just a moment ago. And this is where they're talking about him having Alzheimer's, and that's okay. We can skip that one. That's all right if you want. But then we have a fake assassination of President Trump. That was at Sandoval. This is a Democrat. I don't know if Brandon, if you have the tweet, can show that from the fake assassination. Now here we have a guy who has supposedly a fake gun pointed at a fake president, and this somehow is supposed to be okay. This is like Kathy Griffin in her, headless Donald Trump. And of course, Sandoval comes out later and says, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened. We shouldn't have had that there. And then we have another one where we have Scaramucci, who's been out lately. This guy spent 11 days. He only lasted 11 days in the Trump administration because he was so bad. And he's come out. And we have a video on him, if Brandon has that, where he's talking about Donald Trump.
I don't know that he has that.
Don't have that. So. Okay. So that's another video we don't have. But my point is, we have all of these people. We have Scaramucci coming out and talking down about him, saying, that he's a horrible person. This guy who wrote a book about him and saying how wonderful he is now is coming out. He's what I called him last week. He's the white Omarosa, because
I saw that.
his 15 minutes of fame, and he's just like Omarosa. And then here they are together on TV together talking about how horrible Donald Trump is. And then we're back to impeachment. We have a senior member of the Democrat Party now saying, now we need to open up an investigation on impeachment. So a laundry list, Bill, that they're coming against the president with.
That's enough to make somebody crazy.
I know.
I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying that is enough to make somebody crazy. But it seems to me, once again, that they're the ones that are losing it because they are all over the place. And I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I think that Trump, for these people, is what Jerusalem is to the nations. And God says that Jerusalem will be a cup of trembling. In other words, it's something they're tripping over all of the time. And eventually it leads to their destruction. And, this is not to elevate Donald Trump. This is just to speak to God's purposes. It seems to me that that's what he is to these people, because God is using him to expose just how deeply embedded corruption and wickedness is in our nation and the people who run this nation, and particularly, and the Republicans don't get a pass on this, mind you, but particularly in the Democratic side of things, the progressive, the liberal, the socialist side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And you can see it as they ramp things up because they're feeling so desperate now. It's like we've done everything else. We've pulled everything out of our hat. What are we going to do next? And they are desperate, and things just are, it's speeding up because of it.
Well,
to watch them.
I hope that what we're seeing going on in some of these rallies is a true reflection of what's going on in the country. And by, I mean, you get tens of thousands of people showing up at these rallies. In the same town, Biden had what, 30? Something like that. And he didn't
Maybe.
even show or something like that. And by the way, our friends James and Gail O'Hare, who are with us, joining us today, were at that rally. I saw your picture, guys, from Fox News. Anyway, I hope it's a true reflection of where people are, that people aren't falling for these things. Because the media, of course, if we could trust that the media was reporting to us honestly and sincerely and genuinely what's going on, then you would think that this is over. You know, that, you know, Trump is history. Everything he's done that we agree with in this administration is going to be quickly undone and reversed. But then you see things going on in these rallies, it makes you think there's still smoke and mirrors. And so I go back to something else that I've shared here before. And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but it has to do with all the stuff that they're throwing at the president. The adversary is always doing this kind of thing when he knows that there are more of us than there are of them. He's going to paint the picture that we're in the minority, we're on the defense, we're turning on our heels. He has the upper hand. Well, in the media, in some ways, he does. All right, but on the street, in the neighborhoods, in the workplace, it may not be that. And so, people who listen to us and to other programs, we need to not buy what all these people are throwing, because every day it's something else. Again, it started out with Russia, it was the racism, it's Alzheimer's, it's this, it's that, is always something. So let's just not take it, as the gospel.
Right.
Don't let it dissuade you from standing for what's right and what's true and what's righteous and what's holy, and don't become weary in well-doing, as the Bible puts it. We need to keep talking about these things. We need to be speaking up for what's right, and then we need to take action within the boundaries of the law, mind you, but we need to take action.
Now, Nadler said they're already moving forward with an impeachment. Jim and Linda said they're panicking because they know the D class is coming. Sherry says, amen, Bill. They sound like adolescents walking after the flesh and not after the spirit, James and Gail O'Hare said. Dawn said, I don't think the American people had any idea how corrupt the government really was. I don't think they did at all. James said, yes, it was amazing. The people were electric, and that he's talking about the rally with President Trump. Trump is getting stronger, Sandy says. And Ginger said, we need a major outpouring of God, not just on sinners, but on the sleeping true church. And let's see, James said, such love at the rally, amazing the people that are supporting the vision and purpose of our president. He is the man for the hour. And let's see, when intention happens, let it wake us up and stay at attention. And, very quickly, one last subject I wanted to talk about just in the last couple of minutes is that yesterday, I don't know if you noticed that, President Trump won in the court that basically says that if you are an abortion clinic like Planned Parenthood, you're not going to be allowed to refer people to an abortion and receive Title X money. And so today is the day that took effect. And yesterday, Planned Parenthood said that they were going to opt out of any Title X money. And that adds up to them losing perhaps $60 million in federal funding, which for anybody who is pro-life, I think that's a very good thing that happened yesterday.
It's a very good start.
Uh-huh.
As I understand it, they're still getting something where upwards of 500 million federal dollars outside of this 60 million. So yeah, I think that it's wonderful that the president found a way to deny them some funds. Hopefully it's going to hurt them. But I hope that he keeps the pressure up and eventually put these people out of business once and for all.
And we have to also be aware that they are going to continue to fight. So they hope that it goes up to the Supreme Court. Now, Verona said, needless to fear, make sure we must arend with the Anna, I don't even know what that is. Sorry, I started to read it and I got lost in the reading it. But anyway, I think that with the Planned Parenthood is a little bit of good news. It's great to have some good news.
Yeah,
we
we'll
have
take it.
A long way to go. Yeah, we'll take whatever.
We'll take it.
And as far as President Trump is concerned, people need to stay focused. They need to stop believing everything they hear. They need to start understanding that if you don't vote for Trump, the alternative, you see, we've talked about it today. The alternative is what we've talked about today, and that's who you have. In other words, there is no alternative if you want to save the republic. And that's kind of the message that I want to leave people with. And also what I hope to do is, I know we didn't have my Periscope today. And for all of those who are in here on Facebook and YouTube that know about my Periscope, I will try to run this a little bit later today on Periscope so you can see the replay. Because this was, I think we talked a lot about a lot of things that are going on right now that is not being broadcast out on mainstream media. We want to make sure that everybody hears it. So,
amen. So,
any final words or?
No, just other than just be encouraged, don't be discouraged. But to be discouraged means you've been robbed of courage. To encourage someone means you possess courage and you want to pass that along. And never are we instructed in the Bible to discourage one another. To the contrary, we're always, it's always that we are to encourage one another. So we need to do that and not believe everything that comes over the airwaves. Just
keep the faith.
Keep the faith. Yeah, there you go.
Keep looking up. Keep looking up. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Love your comments and all of your questions. And until next time, God bless you. We'll see you again next week. Take care.